Alright, in this video we're going to go over the method getElementById. That's an I, not an L, capital I. Get, capital E, element, capital B, Y, capital I, D. getElementById. Let's jump in and see how it works. For this demonstration, I opened Dreamweaver. I'll be using Dreamweaver to show you how this method works. You're welcome to use whichever editor you feel most comfortable with, but this is one I particularly like. So getElementById. This is a method that allows us to access property information of elements. What does that mean? Well, we've already learned that elements are anything that pertains to an HTML tag, for example. This is an element. This is an image element. If we look at our body tags, this is a body element. This is an element which contains everything within those open and closing tags. All of our elements have properties, and we've worked with this in our last class. For example, one property of image is it has a source, src, and this particular source is javascript.jpg. So we're going to use this particular element in our example for the getElementId method. First of all, we notice that there's the word ID in the name of this method. So I'm going to, in my image element, I'm going to put an ID, not a class. This is not what we're doing. We're not doing classes. This is specific to IDs. So I'm going to give this particular image an ID of, let's call this my image, using camel case naming convention there. So I have an image with a property source. Here's the value of that source property, my alt tag, and an ID of my image. Okay, our next step is to create a function. And so we are going to, in our head tag, create a script, HTML tag, opening and closing. Notice I didn't put type equals text. You can, text/JavaScript, you can, but in HTML5 it's not required because it's considered the default. So that's new. The CIW book doesn't really go into that, but you don't have to put that in your script tag unless you want to for clarity. Okay, so I'm going to create a function. So I'll write out the word function. I'm going to create a function name using camel case. I'm going to call this my method, DHOD. And then I will put parentheses. Should I want to receive an argument, I'll put the arguments in here. And then open my function and close the function. Notice the use of indenting on this code. This makes this code very easy to read, both for myself later, or if someone else were to pick up my code, and it will make it easier for maintenance. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is declare my variable. I'm going to call it name of image, using camel case naming convention there. And then here's where getElementById comes in handy. Alright, I'm going to reference that variable that I just created, name of image, and I'm going to set that or assign that to whatever this source value is. And that's where getElementById comes in handy. We need to put the word document first, then I'm going to put a period, and then getElementById. Please notice the letter casing here. This is camel case, so we've got capital E, capital B, and capital I. It's very easy, and a lot of people make the mistake of making ED capital, for example. This method will not work. JavaScript is very case sensitive, so make sure that you pay attention to the case of this method name. Get, capital E, element, capital B, by, capital I, lowercase d. Okay. So getElementById, and then in parentheses we're going to put, I'll just put the whole thing in there for now, In parentheses, in quotes, we want to tell JavaScript what element are we trying to get the ID. Let's go grab whatever element by the ID name that I'm defining. In other words, our image, we've given it an ID name of my image, my IMG. So that's what I'm going to put within these quotes. And again, it's case sensitive, very important. So what I'm doing here is I'm, first of all, with this statement, document getElementById, parentheses, quotes, my image, I'm asking JavaScript, I'm asking the browser to go get this value. Go look for ID, my image. Once you find that element, I'm going to ask for the source.src. I'm going to close it. So go get this element, my image, identified by the ID attribute. Go find it within that the property of source, and let's pull out that value. And once that all has been found, we're going to put that into name of image. Okay. My next statement then is going to be very simply alert name of image. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Image. So all I'm doing is putting up an alert message in this case, which should put up javascript.jpg. In other words, what is the source of this ID element? Okay, one missing piece to this puzzle, and that is how will the browser know when to run this function? We've got a function and we've got an image, but we need to have an event which fires off this function, which then looks for the things that we put into this function. And the way that we do that is we need to put in some kind of event. In this case, we're going to put an onClick handler. So, oops, gotta spell it right. OnClick equals, and we're going to put in the name of our function, which is my method. So onClick quotes, again, make sure you pay attention to case, my method. We need to put the opening and closing parentheses, even though right now we're not sending that function any information. But if we wanted to, we could send it within the parentheses, which would then be received here in the parentheses of the function. So onClick, fire off this function. So JavaScript would then come up to my method and do the appropriate statements that it finds here. So now the catch is, let's see if this works. So I'm going to come up to File and Save. And then I'm going to choose File, Preview in my browser. I get a list of various browsers that I have installed on this machine, or by pressing F12, it'll automatically fire up the default browser. And there is our document, or our website, our HTML page. If I click on JavaScript then, on that image, remember the onClick event fires, our method will then run, and the alert box is putting up the name of that file, which in fact is what we intended it to do. Okay, let's see something else pretty neat that this can do. We've got the value, we used it to get the value of an existing element, but we can also use it to set the value of an existing element. Well, that sounds kind of confusing. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to take the same code that we have before, and ideally what I'm trying to do before I get started is I'm going to, when the user clicks on this JavaScript picture, I want the picture to change. In other words, when the user clicks on this image, I want the source to be a different file. And because it's client side, it'll change right on the website without the page having to refresh itself, so it's instant. So let's see how to make that happen. Okay, this is where we begin to pass arguments. We pass information from the method that's making the call to the function, and we'll pass a value into the function for the function to do something with that new value. So let's see how that works. All right, so I'm going to go into the parentheses of my method, and what I'm saying is on click, please call this function called my method, and I want to send a value of let's see what I call it, js2.png. So in this directory, I have a file named js2.png, and when the user clicks on this image, I would like this source to change in the screen, in the window, in their browser, to js2.png instead of this particular file. I also want you to notice that I put single quotes now instead of double quotes. I have double quotes on the outside of this onClick call, so we don't want to put double quotes inside of here, because if I did put a double quote, it would render an error because it closes my method too soon. My method, the whole syntax needs to be ending at the end of that function name. So we use single quotes inside of these parentheses to send our argument. Okay? So I'm sending to my function this image, js2.png. And I, as the programmer, have to make sure that that file does exist in the directory that I say it does. In this case, it's in the same directory as the file is that I'm creating this website from. I'm not changing any directories to make this happen. Okay? Maybe if I was, I would put in images / if that's where this file resides. But in this case, it doesn't. It's in the same directory. Okay? So I'm sending an argument into my function. So I better have a variable to receive that argument. I don't have to declare it because I'm putting it in the function name. It will declare it by itself. So I'm going to give this one a variable name of new img. That's my new image, my new argument, my new value that I'm sending into this function. Okay, let's get rid of the alert. Comment that out. So I'm not going to be alerting anything on this one. I want to just change the source of this image. Okay, so I still have my variable, which is going to receive or keep track of the location of this element based on its ID. So far this is all correct. Name of image equals document getElementById. Oh, got some confusing code there. There we go. I don't know where that slipped in there, but okay. getElementById, my image. So that looks the same as our last example, but now I'm not trying to get the source, so I'm going to get rid of that. All I want is just the location of that image. Just hold on to that element for me in this variable. I don't need to know the source because I'm going to actually change it. Just hold on to that element for me. Okay. And so now we're going to utilize the source property. We're going to say name of image, which is right here, which is actually this element, just shortens now into a variable name, period, source. We want to do something with that property. We're going to put equals, and we'll put in new image, which should be the new file name that got sent into this function. So equals new image, and then end it in a semicolon. Okay, so just double check to make sure everything looks correct. We're calling our method. We have a new value that we're sending. We have an ID equal to my image. So on that method, we are receiving as an argument a new value, declaring a variable which we will hold the element in. We're going to take that element, and with the dot src, we're going to actually change the source. So this is appending the source property onto our element, and we're going to change it to our new file name that we sent into the arguments. So let's see if that works. Okay, so we go up to File, Save, which I've already saved, File, Preview in Browser, Mozilla Firefox. There's our file. So if we click on the image, sure enough, the image changed. So let's look at that again. I'm going to refresh the page to what it starts, the default that it started off to. Remember, when we click, it calls our method, which changed the source. So that's how the getElementById method works. You can use it to get values, and you can use it to set values of elements. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me. You can also use the Facebook group for posting questions or thoughts or ideas, or of course the Question and A Lounge that we have in our Blackboard. Good luck. I hope you enjoy the new assignment. I think it's kind of fun, and happy coding. All right, in this video, we're going to go over the method getElementById. That's an I, not an L, capital I. Get, capital E, element, capital B, Y, capital I, D. GetElementById. Let's jump in and see how it works.